I've come to the conclusion, and I'm announcing it to the world here, that Lee Harvey Oswald visited the Texas Employment Commission on October 21st, 1963, and that the Warren Commission and Albert Jenner, Mr. Jenner, I think it's Albert, in particular, covered up this fact. And I might even get to why they did it, but I'm going to try to demonstrate that they did it. And what I'm going to be dealing with are the Cunningham exhibits. There's 4 of them. 2 in particular I'm going to pay attention to. When the Warren Commission and Mr. Jenner interviewed employees of the Texas Employment Commission on April 1st and April 2nd, 1963, he used copies of the original document, not the original document. No explanation is presented as to why they didn't use the original documents, but they were using copies. And it is noted in the testimony, at least in the printed version, that the copies they're using are called Exhibits 1 through 3, and that the originals are Exhibits 1A through Exhibit 3A. So I don't know if they really had the originals originally or not, but whatever. They were showing the witnesses the copies, and the copies don't show some things that are on the originals. And here's an example, an important example, I think, where we have a date mentioned of what they eventually say is 10/17/63, which would be October 17th, 1963. And if you look at it on the original on the right, where I've got it enlarged there, you can see that it looks like a 1 has been written over a 2. And then there's a 7 that looks like it might have been written over something. I think it's a 1 underneath the 7. I think that date originally was 10/21/63, and that somebody changed it to make it seem like it was the 17th instead of the 21st. And if you look at the copy, you can see that you can't read what's there. It's like something was there and was erased. Now, eventually, when Mrs. Cunningham executed an affidavit, we learned that certain entries were in green ink and green crayon. No explanation is made about this, but it appears that the green does not copy well with whatever copy process was used. And one could argue that that explains things, that this might be an innocent effect of the copying process. I don't think that explains it, particularly because look at the C that's just above the 10/17 date. There's no hint of a C on the copy, and I think that C would show up somewhat if it was really there. And these copies apparently are photostatic copies. They're not carbon copies. These were cards, the originals that they worked on, that they folded. I think it's very unlikely they would be carbon copies, and I don't think they would use green crayon to make carbon copies. And it is stated by Cunningham that one of the documents is a photostatic copy. So perhaps the photostatic copy did not pick up the green color very well when it made copies. And when the employees were interviewed, Cunningham and Brooks, they went over details on these documents, and particularly with Cunningham, they went over a lot of details, but they didn't, in the Warren Commission testimony, they didn't deal with this apparent 10/17 date. And you could argue they didn't, because on the copy you can barely see that there's anything there. After she had testified, the Warren Commission sent Helen B. Cunningham, Mrs. Cunningham, a letter and an affidavit that they had made up. And this is not an affidavit that she dictated to them. They dictated it to her and sent it to her, or they sent her a copy and sent a copy to Barefoot Sanders, and they wanted to sign it. Now, and if there are any, and there are going to be some things she wants to change on it, so it's going to be retyped. But this is kind of funny, I think. They apparently, based on her testimony, they typed up an affidavit and sent it to her to sign it. And the reason apparently is because they now have the originals in front of them, and they want her to sign an affidavit based on the originals, but they base it on her testimony where she saw the copy. And maybe you can see where that's leading to. Okay, I'm not going to read this. I explained it. Now, Cunningham did make some minor changes to the affidavit that was retyped and she signed. But she did not change this point about the 10/17 date. But this is not anything she went over in her testimony. So even though she has the original in front of her, and presumably she can see that the 1 has been written over a 2, and that the 7 looks like it was probably written over something also, she simply accepts the language provided by Albert Jenner and the Warren Commission. So I think what this is a leading suggestion from Albert Jenner to get her to say that is 10/17/63, as if she had already said so in her testimony when she didn't. And also here it says this entry is related to the final entry in the referral section of Cunningham Exhibit number 1A, and which recites under the heading Remarks at 10:30 a.m. on October 16th, 1963, it was ascertained that Oswald had obtained employment at the Texas School Book Depository. That's something that she did go over in her testimony, where another employee had made a notation on the 16th that he was working. But this date they've got written in is the 17th. It's not the day he made that notation. So one would think if they were ending his case because he's working, they would have ended it on the 16th. But whatever. What I'm getting at here is that the Warren Commission, even though they're providing her with the original, they're just hoping she's going to sign it. She makes a few changes about some things, but she doesn't change this, and I think this is the point they were really interested in. I think they wanted her on the record in this affidavit saying that that date is 10/17, and when they could have shown her the original in testimony, and then she might have started asking questions. She might have mentioned, well, it looks like it's written over something else. But this way they don't have the back and forth at all, so she just signs what they wrote up for her. Now, one of the reasons I think that date is actually the 21st and not the 17th is because on Cunningham Exhibit 3, that date does appear 10/21. It appears on the original. Again, it does not appear on the copy, and Cunningham is not asked in her affidavit to say anything about this. Now, there's also Oswald's signature there right next to an X. And so the implication to me is that something happened on 10/21 involving Lee Harvey Oswald. That is, I think this indicates that Oswald in person appeared on 10/21, October 21, and signed this here. And I think what it means is he was closing his case with this signature. If we look back at the document that was referred to earlier that I haven't shown yet, and this is Exhibit 1A. This is actually the other side of that same document with the 10/17 date that I question. And you can see in the remarks column on the right, in the last line of entry, it says working 10:30A, 10/16. That means on 10/16, this guy RLA, this employee, called the Oswald number and obtained the information that he was working. Now, I think it's important to note for the purposes of this video that this number he called is Ruth Payne's number, and Oswald was working that day, so he did not answer the phone. He did not talk to Oswald. He talked to Ruth Payne. And I think Ruth Payne has testified to that also. So the point here is, I think, that he did not actually talk to Oswald, but he received information that Oswald was working, and he made that notation on 10/16. And this is what the affidavit refers to when it says it's referring to the 10/16 entry is related to the 10/17 entry. What we're supposed to take from that is that this employee RLA determined that Oswald was not working on the 16th, and then that the case was closed on the next day, the 17th. And remember, this is Albert Jenner's presentation to Cunningham. He's the one who put it in these words. That is, that the 17th date is related to this date, and she signed it, but it's his idea, not hers. So I think what Exhibit 3 means here, when we have the 10/21 date with Oswald's signature, I think what this means is because they hadn't contacted Oswald directly, he had to come in and close his case himself, and that he actually did on October 21st. And that's why we have this date here, but I think Jenner is deliberately trying to make it look as though that the case was closed on the 17th, because he doesn't want us to know that Oswald was in that office on the 21st, and he ignores this here. He doesn't ask anybody what this means. Of course, when he's talking to the people, he's showing the copy, which does not show the date. And I think the clincher actually comes from Laura Kittrell, another employee of the Texas Employment Commission, who claimed to have interviewed Oswald many times, but she was ignored by the Warren Commission. I'll read some of this. The last interview she had with Oswald came unexpectedly, Kittrell said. I just looked up from my desk, she said, and there he was, just standing there and grinning. He told me the claims office sent him back to change his work classification back to what it was. He thought it was kind of funny because of all we went through to change it. Kittrell explained that she had added additional work classification codes to Oswald's employment records to increase the possibility of his finding work. Among the codes she added, she recalls that for office work and for offset printing work. She explained that the counselors have the jurisdiction to add codes with one exception. If a person is in a union, he or she must be code classified for the type of work performed by the union. Kittrell said that that is the law. So when she asked Oswald why his work code had changed, he said because he had joined the Teamsters Union. Although she doesn't specifically recall the date, Kittrell believes she can pinpoint Oswald's joining the Teamsters Union as being on Sunday evening, October 20th, 1963. She said Oswald had told her that his wife had just had a baby and that he had just been to the hospital to see her. I can't clearly remember whether he had been out that morning or the evening before, she said. And I can't clearly remember whether he had been out that morning or the evening before last, but I believe it was on a Monday I was talking to him because of the multitude of people coming in. We always have a multitude on Monday. Kittrell said she asked Oswald why he joined the Teamsters when he didn't even have a driving license. She said he told her that a driver's license wasn't necessary to drive a forklift truck in a plant and that he had been eligible to join the union in New Orleans but never did. He then discovered that he was still eligible to join. Kittrell said she asked him if he joined the union because the Teamsters had gotten him a job. He said no. I couldn't understand why he joined the Teamsters, she said, because I know you have to pay a big initiation fee. And there he was so hard up, but I asked him, can I see your union card? And he said, I don't have one. They haven't got it to me yet. Kittrell said that she later found that Oswald was already working at the book depository when he appeared for the last interview at the TEC. That, she said, was when she began thinking back at how different Oswald looked the last time she saw him. She concluded that the person she saw the last time wasn't really Oswald, but perhaps someone he sent in his place in order to maintain his unemployment claim. Now, with all the stuff Kittrell says, not just here but elsewhere, and I'll get to that when I do her video, if she's credible, then the Warren Commission has a problem, because this is not their story about Oswald.